What is up, pregnant and postpartum people? This video is for you. Today on the Postpartum Tea, I'm going to be going live with Dr. Amber Thornton, who is an amazing mother and therapist, and we're going to be talking about what maternity leave looks like for the modern mother. So I'm just going to invite her to join, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let's see, how can I... Right. Welcome, welcome. So today we're there she is. Hey Amber. Hey Dr. Amber.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. How about yourself?
I'm doing well too. It's a day.
Awesome.
Like, of course, the weather is great here. So,
Oh, it's so beautiful.
yeah,
It is a gorgeous day outside. I was like, maybe I should do this outside, but then the sound is is a little unpredictable.
very, yes.
But yes, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today. I have been following your journey. I first discovered you based on what you were doing with your empowered mamas and the balanced working mom, and just following your journey and seeing how you were also like managing being a new mom, being pregnant at the same time. I just thought that was like truly incredible. Um, One thing I always think is so funny is that like when we are like in this kind of space, we know how to help other people, and we can see, oh, they need to do this or do that. And it's really different when you have to apply those principles to your own life because, everything is not one size fits all.
Yep.
So yes. Let's see. So I'm gonna just quickly, let me pull up I have my notes here. I'm going to pull up and just briefly introduce Dr. Thornton. I might call you Dr. Amber. I hope that's
Oh, yeah,
okay.
that's
I just
fine.
love
Call me
like,
Dr. Amber.
okay, perfect.
That's
So
fine.
my husband is a sociologist, so I'm always like, Dr. Danny. He's got a PhD. So I'm like, we're going to use those titles. You earned them, okay?
Too much. I'm dead because of it. So,
Yeah, exactly. Crazy how that works, right? But yes, Dr. Amber Thornton is a licensed psychologist and motherhood wellness consultant. She is the owner of Dr. Amber Thornton Consulting LLC and founder of Balanced Working Mama, where the mission is to completely change the narrative of what is possible for working mothers by helping them to better balance work, motherhood, and wellness. Dr. Thornton resides in the DC area, okay, with her husband and son. She is deeply passionate about helping other working mothers fulfill their goals, passions, and finding more joy throughout their motherhood experiences. And I absolutely love that. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. So really quickly, let me just ask you how long have you been a therapist? How long have you been working as a therapist?
ooh, too long. Well, not too long. I would say, so I graduated from my doctorate program in 2014.
Okay,
So
okay.
I've like been in training and graduate school since 2009.
Yeah, I was
Um,
gonna say, I know how that grad
yeah,
school,
it's like,
that's like 5 years for
yeah,
PhD,
it's
for
a long.
doctorate level.
It was a 5-year program, and so within the field for over 10 years now, but a licensed practitioner for oh, about 6 years now.
Okay.
So yeah, I still do.
Awesome.
It's funny. I still feel like a new psychologist sometimes, but I think it's just that you're always growing, always learning new
Yes.
things. Things are always changing. So,
Yeah. And learning from each client that you're working with too, right? Like,
exactly, yeah, always learning something new. So, it's been a fun journey.
I love that. I love that. So awesome. So you're not new to the therapist world. You've been here, you've been doing it, you've been supporting people and mothers and families. So I love that. And so then you had to kind of apply some of those principles to your own life. Um, but I really wanted to talk with you and kind of get your perspective. And that's also why I really wanted to talk with you and kind of pick your brain on this, because you have like that therapist perspective as well of preparing for maternity leave, navigating maternity leave, setting boundaries for yourself, and especially now, like, I'm definitely curious to see how that looks as you're going from a mom of one to a mom of two. So tell me a little bit about your working situation when you got pregnant with your first baby with C3 and how what was your like what did you envision for your maternity leave or your postpartum period?
Yeah. Wow. So, of course, I'll say it's different for every mom, and I'm sure that we all know that, and also I realized too, like you can plan, but then like your feelings or your thoughts or just the experience might change for you, and so it might alter. But for me, at the time when I had my son, I had him in May of 2019. And so at that time, there was no balanced working mama. I wasn't doing anything on my own. I was working for a community mental health center in the DC area at that time. And so my plan was pretty traditional. I was lucky to be able to have about 9 to 12 weeks of maternity leave, partly paid, some unpaid, but was able to receive that time. And that was really it, just prior to giving birth, making sure that, my team and my supervisor knew the plan of when I was possibly be going out, who was going to be taking care of my clients, and then
Mm-hmm.
making sure I communicate all that so that I can go. And so what I ended up doing, I had planned to have the entire 12 weeks, I believe. But what happened was when I had my son, and I didn't expect this, when I had my son, I felt ready to go back to work sooner than that. And
Mm,
that is not always something you hear. But
right.
I don't know. There was something about it where I was like, I miss being able to tap into that other part. I think I felt ready to start to integrate. Like, okay, I'm a mom. I've been home with him for at that point it was about 9 weeks, and
Okay.
so then what we had decided to do was allow me to transition back to work gradually, and that actually was probably the best thing I could have done. So
Awesome.
I'm happy I
Yes.
got that urge, because otherwise it would have been 12 weeks and then like go full
Full
in
in.
time. And that scared me. So
Mm-hmm.
I stayed home full time with my son for about the first 9 weeks. And then after that, I went to work 1 day a week. And then the next week was 2 days. And then the next week was 3 days. And all the way until I
Yes.
got to full time. And that was
Okay.
like the best plan for me.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like being able to have that flexibility is truly amazing. And that's definitely something I recommend for the clients that I'm working with as a postpartum doula. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if they're wondering, like, well, when should I go back? Or if they have anxiety about going back, I'll say, well, you don't have to just go back, full time right away. Talk, and that's the really, or that's the importance of talking with your employer too before you go out on maternity leave and saying, is this a possibility that I can come back on a flex schedule, starting out maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and like you did, adding more as each week goes along. So I love that you were able to have that opportunity. Now, when you started going back to work, was your son, did you have childcare? Did you have in-home childcare? Was it out of the home, family? What did that look like? And how did you anticipate that as well?
Yeah, so it's funny, we knew that we wanted him to receive out of home childcare when I was pregnant. And so I remember, like, it's so funny, the way that pregnancy back then and now completely, like,
So
I'm thinking
different,
about
right?
all the stuff I did to prepare for him. I haven't done any of it for the second baby. um
It's
but I'm
also just a different time in life too. I'm like, this
yeah,
day and age.
so different, like just literally 2 years apart. But for my son, I remember we created this huge list of daycares in the area so that we could go visit. We were visiting so many daycares while I was pregnant. I remember like literally going up there with my husband and showing up like super pregnant.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, we just want to know because we want to be prepared. We didn't
right.
get caught off guard, when we needed childcare and then not have it.
Yeah.
we definitely went through that process of preparing for him to around 12 weeks to transition to out of home daycare, because
Okay.
both of my husband and I were working outside of the home. And luckily we do have family in the area, but they are still working as well.
Yeah.
And so out of home childcare was definitely the option for us. And so what happened was I started to transition back to work at around 9 weeks.
Hmm.
But luckily my husband was able to work it out with his job, where he, even pre-pandemic, he was able to work virtually. And so they kind of allowed him to work virtually from home when I was going back to work. So
Oh,
between
that's
like 9 to
awesome.
12 weeks, my husband and I kind of took turns to care for my son at home. And then around 12 weeks, we made that transition for him to go to daycare. And even
Okay.
thinking about that, I liked that because it allowed me to transition to work knowing that he was still at home with my husband.
Yes.
Um, and then once I got comfortable with work, then we could transition him to daycare. And so it was comfortable because it wasn't like two transitions all at one time.
Right.
Times like some moms, it's like, all right, I'm going back to work and my child is going to daycare in the same Monday. And
Yeah.
that is a lot.
Right.
And
Because
so
then you're at work stressing about how are they doing
yeah.
at daycare, and
And
having
then
that peace of mind that your husband, he's with your husband. Whew.
exactly.
Oh,
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
again, I really liked that we did it that way, because when I was at work for the first time, I knew he was safe at home with my husband. And then it allowed me to gradually transition. And then I felt good about, him transitioning, because I wasn't trying to transition at the same time.
Right. So you could focus on yourself transitioning back to work and then focus on him transitioning to daycare. And I
Exactly.
especially love that it also gave your husband an opportunity to have like one-on-one parenting time, because sometimes dads don't get that as much, especially if, at 9 weeks postpartum, obviously 12 weeks postpartum. So that is so awesome. So was he able to be home on any kind of paternity leave while you were also on maternity leave?
My husband stayed home for the first 2 weeks.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Um, yep, the first 2 weeks he was fully home, not working virtually or anything, just here. And so
Yeah.
that was a fun time, because it was like us just in the thick of it.
Yeah. But together, figuring it out together. Yeah.
And that was important because I did have a C-section.
Hmm.
So I needed a lot of help those first 2 weeks. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I remember after that, I went back to work that third week. And so that was a lot,
Hmm.
but we got through it. But luckily he was able to be home full time for the first 2 weeks.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That is truly awesome. So, you said that he was able to be home for 2 weeks. Did he feel like he had any kind of transition period when he was going back? I know it wasn't for as long, he wasn't home for as long, but how did he feel going back? Was he like worried about you at home, wanting to be home more? Was he like, yes, because sometimes it's just like
Yeah.
having that like adult world interaction, it's just like, okay, like something I'm familiar with
Mm-hmm. That's a
versus
great.
newborn life.
Yeah, I should ask him.
Yeah.
That's a great. Now I want to ask him, like, how did you feel? The thing about my husband is that he's so grounded. Everything is like
Okay.
so practical. He's so grounded, and so it takes a lot to like
Ruffle him.
ruffle him. And
Yeah.
so I imagine for him, I think he did fine transitioning back. I think he was maybe just more concerned about me and what I
Hmm.
might need. Um, but luckily, I remember at that time he was working maybe like 10 minutes away. And
Okay.
so he would come home for lunch.
Oh,
He,
that's
little
awesome.
break he
Yeah.
had, he would come home. And so I think that he did okay with transitioning, but definitely there was probably some concern about how is she doing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
Yeah,
think
because
that's
a C-section is, that's major surgery. So want to make sure that you're properly taken care of afterwards.
absolutely.
Um, okay, hold on. What's going on with my picture here?
Mhm.
Um, so you covered a little bit about how your recovery went, as your husband was transitioning back to work. So you had a C-section. How did your recovery progress? Did you have any challenges? Was it smooth sailing? What concerns did you have when it came to your physical recovery?
Yeah. Luckily, it was smooth sailing. It didn't feel like it, but it was like there were no complications afterwards, no additional things I had to do. Um, it was smooth sailing in terms of the recovery from the C-section, but it was difficult. It really
Mhm.
was. I had a lot of swelling after.
Yes.
Um, and I didn't even realize, I didn't know that that was a thing that was going to happen. It was just like immediately, as soon as I wake up and as soon as I stand, my legs would swell like
Mm.
double its size. And I was just asking the doctors, like, is this normal? And they're like, yep, it's normal. My blood pressure and everything was fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Good. Good.
so it was hard to move and to get around, but also like with just the pain of the C-section, it was not easy. But
Yeah.
again, luckily, like I had no complications or anything like that. Um, yeah, I think the big physical things for me was recovering from the C-section, but then also navigating the breastfeeding. Um,
Yes. At the same time.
yeah,
Oof.
that was tough. And again, something you just don't think about is breastfeeding is already hard, but when you have a C-section,
Mm-hmm.
it was more
Because
challenging.
it's right on that positioning and being able to move around to move your baby. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was really hard to like position myself well, or even like, you know how they have the boppies and you put it around you. That was not comfortable for me because it
Right.
was putting pressure on my stomach. So it was really hard to navigate how to breastfeed, but then I also had to
Mm.
with some latching. And so I think when I think of like the physical recovery, I always think about like the C-section recovery, but then also breastfeeding was
Yeah.
a lot in terms of like
Yeah.
what my body had to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because breastfeeding, like you are not only are you learning and your baby's learning, but your body is literally doing it. Like you can't stop it from happening. So you're having those physical changes as well, in addition to the physical recovery and also like the stress of learning to breast because it can be very stressful, like making sure you have that good latch and that you don't encourage bad latch habits. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that is definitely something that I hear a lot. When I'm working with new moms who have had C-sections, like helping them even just like being able to sit comfortably, sleep comfortably, position, breastfeeding positions that are going to not press on their scar or their incision. So, definitely, normal challenges. So let's move forward and talk about, so what are some things that you learned maybe about yourself or just in general during your first postpartum experience, maternity leave experience that is shaping maybe the way that you're going to do things differently with this baby and with this
Mm,
experience?
yeah, that's a good question. Um, Wow. I learned so much about myself. I don't know. So I said wow because it's like the first thing that popped in my head of what I learned about myself is actually the opposite of how I'm planning to prepare. And so I'll explain it a little bit. But I think one of the big things I learned about myself on that maternity leave experience is that, and this is probably like how balanced working mama came to be. It was like I enjoyed my time being home, but I also felt like, I really, there's more here that, that there's more
Mm,
that I want to be doing. I want to continue to do the other things that feel good too. And so that's
yes.
when I started to get that spark of like, okay, this is motherhood. And what are the other parts of me? I don't want those parts to get lost. Right. And so it was interesting because I previously I hadn't had a lot of moms talk about that experience. I think sometimes we're made to feel like we should always enjoy maternity
Mm-hmm.
leave,
Mm-hmm.
or just be grateful that we can be there with our children. But like for me, I really started to feel very antsy, because I really wanted to start to tap back into those other parts of me that felt good. And it was just like, it hit me like, wow, I need to really work on integrating all these things. It's like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
now I am a mother. This is motherhood. And how do I make sure that I don't lose those other parts? Because when I was on maternity leave, it felt like this is only a part of me, and I really want those other parts back. And so I hope that makes sense. That was
Yes.
a big thing that I learned, is that I was introduced into motherhood, and I'm so happy that it's a part of my life now. And I started to realize how important all those other parts of me are too.
Yes.
Because when you're on maternity leave, you're really just in that one part.
You're in the
Like
world of motherhood. Like
in the world of
it's like
motherhood.
motherhood initiation, crash course, whatever you
Yes.
want to call it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally it. And so it was like, okay, I want those other parts. I want all of this. And so again, I think that's what triggered Balanced Working Mama, was just helping us to realize that we can be moms and continue to keep all those other parts of us alive in the process.
Yes.
But it's funny when I think about this next maternity leave, and I'm gearing up because I got 2 more weeks left on my job.
Ooh.
Well, I have 6 weeks until baby gets here. I have
Yes.
2 more weeks until I can like start to transition into maternity leave.
Yes.
And it's funny, I think what's happening now is like this time I fully want to enjoy all the time I can get.
Yes.
Like I'm ready to just like anytime I can get, I want to enjoy it and be home. And I think it's a few reasons. One, because I now see how hard it is to be a mom and to be working and to do
Mm-hmm.
all the things. And I think my body and my mind deserves that rest and that break to
Yes.
just fully enjoy this new experience, but it'll also allow myself to heal, right? But
Yes.
also it's because I think I feel like I'm in a more comfortable place to actually integrate all the parts of me. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel worried that if I take all this time off of work that I'm going to lose myself, because I know
Yes.
how not to.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes.
and I think that's just pre-work that I already did with my son, right? So I'm excited to like this time I think I get like 18 weeks. Like I'm gonna get a lot of
Awesome.
time off, just the way that my school schedule works, because I still work for a school.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna get a ton of time off, and I'm really excited to just
Take
experience
your
it all.
time.
Yes.
And I can definitely relate to that because I had a similar kind of experience with my first son. It was this really like huge sense of loss of self, of like, who am I now? Like you said, like when you're postpartum, it's just like all encompassing motherhood, which is fine. But I didn't understand that the other parts of me were still there, and the thing was also that some parts of me had to be left behind. I did a room on Clubhouse last week where we talked about mourning your pre-baby life, so talking about those parts of yourself that maybe didn't make it across the threshold of birth, and you're maybe mourning parts of yourself that you miss, or your body that you miss. And so that's definitely a very real thing that happens. Is just like some parts of you come and shift and transform as you add motherhood to that puzzle of yourself, and some things just kind of get left behind, which is okay. And sometimes they may come later in life. Like I know for me, music was really important, and I kind of fell off my music game, but I'm bringing it back. I'm
Good.
9 years postpartum at this point. Like I had my first baby 9 years ago, but and that just because things don't immediately transfer doesn't mean that you can't bring those parts of yourself back. That doesn't mean that you can't revisit hobbies and things that you used to enjoy. And it's so important for you to be fulfilled as an individual so that you can be the best mom. Because if the rest of you isn't being honored and served, then mom is going to be basically, like they say, pouring from an empty cup, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to fulfill yourself.
Yep. And that was the thing. Like I needed to feel fulfilled, because the more that we feel fulfilled,
Mm-hmm.
even with the things that have nothing to do with motherhood, it makes us better moms, you know?
Yes,
And so like it's
exactly.
so important to remember, like, okay, go do the things that you want to do. Like go enjoy, even if it is away from your children and away
And
from your
don't feel bad about it. That's the
don't
key
feel
thing
bad
there.
about
Don't feel bad about it.
it. And if you do feel bad about it, go do it anyways, because that guilt is temporary.
It's
But then
temporary.
also the guilt lies, like the guilt will tell you you're doing something wrong when you're
Mm-hmm.
not. You're
Like, but
you're
I'm having so much fun.
you're having fun, you're contributing to your wellness and your health, and that is what matters. So
Exactly.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. And I just love how you said that, with your first experience, you learned that there is time, you can focus on being postpartum, and that there is time to, even in postpartum, there's time to do self-care and still nurture yourself. But you know that, okay, I can be, it's kind of like when people, like when they say, like, when you get married, right? And you have kids, and then the empty nest. and now you're looking at each other like, okay, it's just us again, right? But like, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to be super devoted to taking care of myself, learning my baby, establishing breastfeeding, and just resting. And I know that there will be time for me to go back to the gym, hang out with my girlfriends, get back into working more, or whatever it may be, those things that fulfill you, doing hobbies and spending more time on those things. But you know that it's okay to focus all your time here for however long you want. Even if it's 18, I'm like, 18 weeks, that is amazing, right? Like, even when you said from your first experience, like, oh, I had 12 weeks and now you have 18 weeks, it's just like, it gives you more breathing space, more time to transition, more time to transition your older child, right? More time to transition your baby into whatever. I don't even know what life looks like now for working parents when it comes to like childcare and stuff, because it's just,
it's different. It's so different for
it's
everyone.
different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm truly am feeling for anybody that's having a baby, being pregnant during this time, because it's unprecedented. We don't have anything to look at. Okay, well, what we did that, we don't have anything to look at as a guide, right? We're all figuring it out, like even me as a doula, but the moms, like, I feel for y'all, because you're just trying to figure it out and it's already a hard time. And then they add a freaking pandemic on top of it. So, whew, sending all the love your way, because it's a lot. It is truly a lot.
It is. It is. But again, I think, community is so important, and I know you're big on that and supporting moms. And so, like, having community support, even like from my
Mm-hmm.
virtual like friends that we know on Instagram, like it
Yes.
helps a lot. But agreed, it is definitely an unprecedented time.
Yes,
No
absolutely.
roadmap for what 2020 and 21 has brought.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I have, I think, one more question,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna just kind of, so based on your past experiences, what you have planned
Mhm.
coming up with this baby and this postpartum experience, what is the number one tip that you would give to pregnant moms, pregnant parents who are preparing for maternity leave? Maybe they're a first time mom and they don't know, because it's easy to say, oh, I've been there before as a second time, this is your second time, but thinking about those first time moms.
Right. Yes. Oh my gosh. I would say the number one tip that helped for me was to start to include my support people in the process early.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always say, like, this is not the time to try to prove to yourself or anybody else that you can do it. Um,
You don't get a reward. There's
you
no
don't get a
rewards
gold
for that.
star for like doing all the things. Like, this is the time to really figure out, like, okay, how are we gonna manage having a new life in our home realistically and sustainably.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that looked like making sure that me and my husband knew that we are a team. We are a team.
Yes.
Mom's not doing everything and daddy's not doing everything. Like, we're working together on this. And so having a lot of conversations early on about, okay, well, who's gonna do bath? Who's gonna help with breast?
Right.
Like, who's gonna wake up in the middle of the night? How are we gonna communicate when we're burned out? Just having those conversations
Mm-hmm.
before the baby even gets here. Even if the things you come up with change when the baby gets here, because that happens too.
Yes.
But just getting used to the fact that you don't have to be the only person to help care for this little person. You
Exactly.
don't have to be the primary person to care for the little person.
Right.
There are people that can help and support you, especially if you have a partner in the home, or
Exactly.
if you have close family members nearby. Get used to incorporating them into the process early,
I
because
love that.
what happens is we don't, and then a lot of it falls on us. We become default, and then it gets harder when we need
Mm-hmm.
more help because we're not used to the help.
Right.
And so get the help early and incorporate day one.
Yes. And I love that, because it's also just establishing like the expectation. So even like you said, it may change, but we've talked about it, right? We've had a discussion about it. We've talked about maybe what are some of the fears or challenges that we have and how we can deal with it. So then if it changes or the situation maybe doesn't work out, at least you have a baseline for that conversation. And it's not like, well, we have to start from the beginning of, how are we going to handle visitors, right? So you've already talked about it, you set the expectation, and like you said, and like I said, it can change, and that's the thing with planning for postpartum is like a lot of things will change because you can't predict, necessarily like how your birth is going to go. So you may prepare for different types of recovery. So maybe you're preparing for what a vaginal birth might look like and what a C-section is going to look like for you postpartum. And so by talking about it early on, you're having the conversation, you're managing. I do a what to expect postpartum class for families, and not just mom and dad, but they can bring their parents, their circle of support, and it's literally like, okay, let's talk about it now rather than me teaching them and then they have to go deliver the information and they don't remember everything. Things get lost in translation. It's like, nope, I said it. Now y'all can talk about it and just get it all out there. And, now you know what your mom is really thinking about cooking for you after birth. Maybe she was like, I'm not cooking, right? It's like, well, now we know we need food. We need to take into account like how we're going to prepare meals, and maybe we need to get a meal train going or have a food prep service and someone drops off the meals. But talking about it will get all of those things out in the open so that you're not sitting there holding the baby sleep deprived and like, oh, you're not going to cook? Okay, now you have to figure it out.
And that's even something like, I'm so glad you said even like having these conversations with extended family, because I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something we could have done a better job at. Like my husband and I did a great job of like making
Yeah.
sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
But then when it came to extended family, I do remember we weren't on the same page about what help looked like. And then
Mm.
an awkward moment where, one of our family members was like, well, I'm trying to help. But for me, I was like, but help feels different. And
Right.
so we had that conversation. It was awkward, but we got through it. And now we know for this next time what help looks like for
Right.
me and what help looks and feels like for that other person, and how we
Right.
can, be on the same page. So I think that's
Yes.
a great idea.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, well, take it, girl. And that is so true to also what you said about asking for help. And that's something that I teach about as well. I think it's like, I might need you to come on in my class and just speak a little bit. But when I talk about like asking for help, I talk about like, one, say exactly what you need. And two, understand how the person you're asking for help can realistically help, right? Because I know like my mother-in-law, I thought, okay, maybe she'll come and cook some food. She was like, oh, I'm not doing that. And that was that.
Oh,
so
yeah. It's so,
so it's just
yeah.
like you have to
Yeah.
understand, like, so for her, it was like when she comes over, I'm gonna take a shower, I'm gonna, have some me time because I know she will gladly hold the baby so I can do those things. And maybe I'll ask somebody else for help with food, right? But
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, because it's funny, my mother-in-law, um, she cooked, like she came over and she would cook
Yes.
here. But I think for me, it was like unnerving because I felt like, ooh, someone's in
Mm,
my space and I really just want to like, ugh, I just need this
yes.
alone. And again, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think we learned like how to navigate that and how to make it feel comfortable for me, and
Yeah.
also to allow her to participate in this process and support us. And so yeah, she was on board with cooking, but we just weren't
Yes.
on the same page about how to go about the
How?
process.
Yep.
um
Yeah. And so that's like a great thing that like before you give birth, that's when you can talk about like what do the roles look like. So maybe you could have, if you figured, I mean, and that's the thing, you may not have known that you didn't want her cooking in your kitchen. But after she did it, then you maybe be like, it's really stressful. Do you think you could just cook at home and bring the food over,
yeah,
And then you have to have a conversation. But even if you talked about it before birth, at least you have set that expectation of, we absolutely want you to cook for us. And even saying that things could change, we don't know exactly how we're going to be feeling. Things can change. And so even just like, we're going to be staying flexible, stay flexible with us, right? So yeah, having that conversation with your partner, with your family members, especially the people that are going to be around you, supporting you in that the time after you give birth, and what their roles look like, because some people say, oh well, even like with me as a postpartum doula, say, well, oh no, we don't need a postpartum doula. My mom's coming, and I'll say, well, your mom is trained in breastfeeding, and and knows how to handle a C-section recovery or tears and episiotomies or vaginal birth, and knows how to wrap your belly. And some moms do know how to do, listen, some moms do know how to do all of those things.
Yeah.
But it's about getting clear on the roles. So it's like, well, this is what I need. Can this person provide that for me? And even talking with the person, can you provide this for me? And they're like,
Yeah.
maybe you should get that doula because that seems like something that's not my area of expertise or something that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that tip. That is a great tip. I'm going to definitely be sharing it with all the moms that I'm working with.
Yep.
And I just wanted to invite anybody that is watching, if you have any questions for Dr. Amber, feel free to drop it in the comments or hit the little bubble with the question icon. She is truly amazing. I am so appreciative for you taking the time out of your schedule and joining me today. I feel like you're just right around the corner because I'm in Bowie.
You know what? I thought about that when you were talking about postpartum doula. I was like, oh, I could have got her to help me with it. Because, yeah,
I'm
right.
here for you.
So I gotta keep
You
that in
can you can absolutely always call me. I'm all like, even if you just have questions, girl, give me a call, okay? And I got my my vaccine, so
mind. Great, great.
I will
Awesome.
definitely be going back to in-person visits soon. I've been doing virtual. So, if you have questions, I'm definitely happy to help. I am, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, you need to pay my little consultation fee. Like, it's postpartum. Like, let's uplift all the moms. Okay, so Tara said, do all postpartum doulas know how to deal with care regarding episiotomies, C-sections, etc.? Yes. So that is a part of our training. When we are going through our postpartum doula training, we learn about all of the different types of births and how to support new moms after they give birth, whether they have a tear and they have a tear repair, whether they have an episiotomy, and especially C-sections because a lot of moms, a lot of parents who have C-sections, they need more support after they give birth. So that is definitely something we are trained in. So yes, thank you for that great question, Tara. Yes, yes, yes. We are trained to cover all things postpartum. So anything that's going to be possibly be an issue or a challenge or even a win postpartum, we are familiar with those things. So yes, thank you for that, Tara. So I didn't know if you had any questions for me. I know I was supposed to be interviewing you. But
No,
no, I think you can. What'd
no,
you
I
say?
want to say, like, I think it's just so important, again, the work that you do.
Thank
Because even
you.
with like thinking about a doula, sometimes we don't think about postpartum doulas.
Right.
And so that is just, again, such an important part of the process. I think sometimes we're so focused on like the birth and
Yes,
that. And then there's this whole other part afterwards that you're like, oh,
exactly.
wow. So I just want to commend the work that you're doing because
Thank
it is
you.
so important. Like postpartum lasts a lot longer than the birth does. So we can't forget about that part.
Exactly, exactly. That's what I like to say. Birth is the catalyst, right? But postpartum, you are postpartum forever.
Yeah.
So we're all, if you've been pregnant and given birth, you're postpartum. And so if you have any struggles, like you deserve support. Even if you don't have struggles, you deserve support after you give birth because it is a transformational time. You are supporting and raising new life. You are a new version of yourself. Like you deserve time and grace and rest and, just loving support around you. So, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Awesome. So I think we can go ahead and finish up. I just want to say thank you again so much, Dr. Amber, for joining me today. And I definitely look forward to hopefully collaborating with you on some things in the future, especially because we're in the same area. But I want you to definitely go ahead and take your maternity leave, take your postpartum time, rest, snuggle with that baby, love on yourself, take care of yourself, and just enjoy being postpartum because it doesn't have to be a negative experience or a hard time. It can be a beautiful time. So
Oh,
And if I can support you through that time, I would be honored to. Selling myself right now.
thank you. And yeah, I'm definitely gonna take the time and just relax and just like settle into it. So I appreciate it.
Yes, yes. And one more thing I wanted to share too is one thing I've been hearing is that, especially second time moms, they're actually loving the pandemic because it's just limiting. They don't have to worry about visitors and entertaining people. They
That's
just, we're
true.
in the nest.
That's true. Like, don't have to worry about saying no. Like, don't have to go through that anxiety. Like, it's just
And
uh,
if you feel worried that you need an excuse, it's a pandemic.
right. Like, we're not playing that here. So yeah,
Exactly.
that makes a lot. Yep.
Exactly, exactly. So we will leave you with that. And I hope you guys all have a blessed and wonderful, beautiful afternoon. It is gorgeous outside today. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, Dr. Amber. And thank you again so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye, everybody.